They say a single question can change the weather of a life. Mine was simple. "Are you happy, Chloe?" The pause lasted long enough for 2 ice cubes to melt in untouched water, long enough for morning traffic to fade into the hush of midday. When she finally answered, her smile curved like a hairline crack across fine china. I did not really hear the words. I only heard the sound of something delicate splintering along a fault line that had always been there. Since that morning, I have lived in the reverberation of that question, measuring time by the echo rather than the clock. Most nights, long after the city settles into its soft, electronic hum, I replay that breakfast scene like a courtroom exhibit. I adjust the lighting, zoom the lens, place my heart on the witness stand, and ask it to testify under oath about what it knew and when. My heart pleads the fifth. It has always been terrible with dates. Our marriage used to feel like a well-woven quilt. Many colors, some frayed edges, but warm enough for storms. Then the small things began to shift. Her phone tilted away when I entered the room. Business trips lengthened from 2 nights to 4, and the fragrance of a new cologne, musky and unfamiliar, followed her home. Trust is not lost in a single catastrophe. It erodes, grain by grain, until one day the floor gives way beneath your feet. Looking back, there were omens. The uncharacteristic silence during our Sunday crossword ritual, the way she no longer corrected my spelling out loud but underlined it quietly with a pencil, leaving the page littered with small gray graves. Even the dog, Baxter, seemed confused, shuttling between us as though trying to remember which lap was home. She had started wearing her hair differently, loose waves instead of the neat bun I had watched her perfect each morning for 6 years. New habits crept in like invasive species. She hummed unfamiliar songs while doing dishes, checked her reflection twice before leaving for work, and began buying groceries for meals she never cooked. The pantry filled with artisanal pasta and imported cheeses that gathered dust like expensive tombstones. Wednesday, lasagna night. A ritual we started in our first apartment, tiny and overheated. She used to sing while chopping basil, off-key but fearless. Now I cooked alone. The lasagna grew a rubbery skin under the oven lamp. At 10:08 p.m. I texted, "Still alive out there?" "Deadline," she shot back. 2 blue ticks. No typing bubble after. I set 2 plates anyway because habit is crueler than hope. I poured wine for her seat and watched the candle burn down, imagining she would walk through the door, say, "Sorry, darling," and the nightmare would fold itself into morning. The lock never clicked. That night I learned food has a temperature beyond which it tastes of nothing, just as love has a distance beyond which it feels like outer space. That sleepless night I wandered through our house like a tourist in my own life, rediscovering artifacts of happiness. The wine stain on the living room carpet from our housewarming party, her coffee mug still holding the imprint of her lips, the bookmark she had left on page 247 of a novel about forgiveness. I sat on the bed and remembered our first night in this house, how we had made love on the bare mattress. She had traced constellations on my chest with her fingertip, naming each freckle after a star. "This one is Vega," she whispered, "the brightest in Lyra." I had laughed, said she was making it up. "All the best stories are made up," she replied, and kissed me until I believed in her mythology. I once believed I was above snooping. Principles are easy when untested. Her laptop was open. I told myself I would only check her calendar. But fear guided my hand to the photos folder. Hotel hallways, a man's hand resting on the small of her back, 2 glasses of champagne sweating beside an unmade bed. The proof landed like ice water in my lungs. In that moment I understood that truth is not liberating. It is heavy, metallic. For a cruel heartbeat, I remembered our first date under the planetarium dome. She whispered constellations. I pretended to know the names. I told her stars were just dead fires whose light had not yet realized it was too late. She said that was the saddest, most beautiful thing she had ever heard, then kissed me to prove life could answer back. Now, holding her betrayal in shaking hands, that memory felt stolen. I scrolled and scrolled, as if more pain might dilute the first cut, but misery is undilutable. Among the photos was a video clip only 8 seconds long, her soft laugh, a hotel robe sliding off one shoulder. I watched it 20 times, mapping every pixel into the blueprint of my devastation. Grief, I discovered, is a meticulous architect. The metadata told its own story. Timestamps from business trips, GPS coordinates that mapped a geography of betrayal. Chicago, Denver, Seattle, cities where I had helped her pack, kissed her goodbye, counted the days. Each location now felt like a crime scene. I could have screamed, could have thrown the laptop. Instead, I booked a room on the floor below theirs and waited. The elevator climbed slowly, each ding a funeral bell. Outside 612 I listened. First laughter, then silence, then the hush of sheets disturbed. When I knocked, I did not recognize the sound of my own fist. The door opened and time stretched, elastic and cruel. Her eyes widened. His voice stuttered my name. In that instant, the mythology of us died without ceremony. His name was Oliver. I learned this from his stammered introduction, as if we were being introduced at a dinner party. He was shorter than I had imagined, wore expensive glasses, smelled like the cologne that had haunted my pillow for months. She reached out, lips moving around apologies no one would believe. I left. The hallway felt a mile long. There is no movie ending where confrontation brings closure. There is only adrenaline poisoning the bloodstream and a terrible, ringing quiet. The night after the hotel, I tried to write her a letter. Dear Chloe, it began, and then stopped. I filled 9 pages with versions of the same unsentenced thought. How could you? At sunrise, I fed the pages into the fireplace, watched the flames translate anguish into warm air. Ash, I realized, is simply grief that has stopped remembering. In the sleepless weeks that followed, I became a detective of my own devastation. Oliver Chen, 34, marketing director for a tech startup, divorced, 2 kids, a marathon runner who posted inspirational quotes about persistence. His last relationship update was 6 months ago. Sometimes the universe sends you exactly what you need. The irony felt like swallowing glass. He looked happy in his photos, the kind of happiness that doesn't know it's built on someone else's rubble. I closed the laptop, disgusted with myself. But grief makes archaeologists of us all, digging through other people's lives for clues about our own catastrophe. Divorce begins long before paperwork. It begins with the first night you sleep back to back. By the time lawyers entered, our hearts had already filed for separation. She cried, said it was a mistake, said she loved me. I watched the tears fall like rented rain because I knew she would dry them on someone else's shoulder the moment I turned away. We split possessions the way surgeons remove a tumor, centimeter by centimeter. I kept the dog. She kept the piano. Every signature felt like chiseling our names off a monument we once worshipped. 2 days before she moved out, Chloe cooked dinner. Pasta with the artisanal sauce from her guilty shopping sprees. We ate in silence, the clink of forks composing a funeral march. Do you remember, she said suddenly, when we used to talk about getting old together? Sitting on a porch somewhere, arguing about which plants to grow? I looked at her, really looked, for the first time in months. There were new lines around her eyes. I remember, I said. I can see that future sometimes, she continued, like a movie playing in another room. We're still there, the U.S. that could have been, watering tomatoes. I wanted to say that alternate versions of ourselves were poor comfort, but kindness felt more important. Maybe they're happier, I offered. She smiled, the first genuine smile I had seen in months. Maybe they learned something we didn't. Our last mediation session was a symphony of clipped phrases: custodial schedule, equitable distribution, emotional damages. The term emotional damages landed like sarcasm. She signed quickly. My signature shook. When we stood, we did not hug. We nodded like colleagues concluding a quarterly report. Grief and rage are twins who do not take turns. Some mornings I ran until my lungs tasted of metal. Some nights I drank until the world blurred into merciful shapes. I emptied the house, sold it to strangers, bought a loft so white it looked erased. I learned to cook for one, to grocery shop without arguing, to fall asleep with a podcast rather than her breathing. The scar remains, a reminder that a heart is not broken once, but every time you remember. Recovery did not progress in a straight line. Some days I woke with energy radiant as sunrise. Other mornings the weight returned. Baxter would place his chin on my ankle as if anchoring me to living. Insomnia is a city that never dims its neon. At 2:11 a.m., I scrolled through a forum of strangers dissecting betrayal. At 3:07 a.m., I brewed tea, stared at its steam, considered forgiveness like a language learned too late. At 4:39 a.m., I finally slept. I woke at 6 a.m. to Baxter's cold nose, a reminder that mornings arrive whether or not you believe in them. Dr. Patel's office smelled of eucalyptus and unspoken grief. "Name the emotion in one word," she prompted. "Static." Static isn't an emotion, Liam. It is when every thought crackles but nothing changes channel. She asked me to write a letter to the night I discovered the truth. I wrote one sentence. Your silence was louder than any confession. By week 8, she introduced silence drills. 5 full minutes of staring at a metronome swinging. Notice the itch to speak, she said. That itch is where pain hides. I noticed not an itch, but a fire, and for the first time I allowed it to burn without rescue. Divorce court smelled of old carpet and fluorescent defeat. The judge stamped our past with a practiced sigh. Walking out, she tried to meet my eyes. I offered her the same silence she had gifted me for months. Outside, the sun was absurdly bright. I waited for devastation, but something else arrived. Relief. Thin. Tentative. Like the first inhale after being underwater too long. I survived, and survival is not a neutral act. It is a declaration. I learned to hold my own hand, to talk to the mirror, to invest in plants because they grow quietly, asking nothing but light. One evening, I cooked lasagna again, ate it on the balcony, and it tasted, miraculously, like food. I began volunteering at the animal shelter. Dogs do not care about your backstory. One senior husky, half-blind, leaned against my legs with the weight of someone who has survived every storm but still loves rain. I decided to adopt him. I named him Atlas because he carried more than his share of hurt, yet kept his tail aloft. Atlas arrived with cautious eyes. The shelter warned me he hated water, but grief recognizes grief. I coaxed him to the Riverside Trail anyway. For 2 weeks he refused to step off the bank. On the 15th day he placed one paw into the current, looked back at me, then waded in, chest deep, tail whirling. We walked downstream together, 2 creatures relearning buoyancy. That afternoon, I understood something fundamental. Healing is not about returning to who you were. It's about becoming someone who can carry the scars without letting them define your gait. Rebuilding is less cinematic than destruction. I painted the living room wall a shade called Quiet Harbor. I hung photographs of places I have never been. On Saturday mornings, I join a community woodworking class. I built a coffee table out of reclaimed oak. Its surface retains scars from a previous life, tiny grooves that catch morning light like truths admitted at last. We sat on his porch, my father and I. He listened as I poured the story out. When I finished, he said, Pain travels through blood, son, unless someone sets it down. He placed a thick hand on my shoulder. For the first time, I wondered if forgiveness is hereditary too. Your mother and I, he continued, we stayed angry so long we forgot what we were originally fighting about. Don't let bitterness become your permanent address. Cooking, for one, required relearning proportions. I bought a cookbook called Table for One. There was meditation in these small measurements, precision that felt like self-care. Tuesday nights became experimental. I made pancakes for dinner, ate them standing at the kitchen counter. These meals lacked the performance of couple cooking, but they also lacked the tension that had seasoned our last year of married dinners. 16 months after the divorce, I hosted my first dinner party. 4 guests, mismatched chairs, candles that smelled of vanilla and hope. I cooked shakshuka. Between chopping onions and crushing tomatoes, I caught myself humming, the sound of a man no longer preoccupied with ghosts. My friend Mira asked if I was seeing anyone. I shrugged, confessed I was learning to date myself first. She raised her glass. To the longest relationship you will ever have. The laughter landed softly, like birds on wire, no weight pulling me backward. 2 weeks later, I met Claire at the bookstore cafe. She recommended a memoir about mountaineering disasters. I offered her a graphic novel about interstellar botanists. We traded numbers on a receipt, texted cautiously, as if each message could detonate old landmines. On our third meeting, she asked about the divorce. I told the truth. She nodded, said, "Scar tissue is stronger than skin." We walked along the river until streetlights stitched gold onto water. Not once did I think of Chloe. Progress, I realized, is measured in moments you forget to hurt. While packing boxes, I found my journal from our first year of marriage. On page 17, I had written, "Love is not an accident, it is daily construction." I traced the ink, felt the irony pulse. The following pages held dinner recipes, doodles of travel plans, lists of baby names we never used. I read until dawn. Then I closed the journal, wrapped it in brown paper, and mailed it to her office with no return address. Some relics belong with their co-author. I keep a box of unsent letters. One to Chloe, one to the man, Oliver, and one to the version of myself who almost stayed bitter. I reread them to remember how far the tide has pulled back. Catharsis is not postage paid. Instead, I slip them back, tie the ribbon, and file them under lessons paid in full. Claire invited me to her book club. This month's selection was The Light We Lost, a novel about timing and missed connections. The discussion meandered from plot to personal. Is it possible to love 2 people simultaneously? When do you fight, and when do you let go? I found myself speaking, my divorce becoming not confession, but contribution to a larger conversation. Driving home, I realized it was the first time I had spoken about my divorce without feeling like I was bleeding on someone else's carpet. I spent a week in Lisbon alone, mornings for pastel de nata, afternoons for trams on cobblestone hills. At a viewpoint, I watched the city turn pink at sunset, listened to a busker play fado on a weather-beaten guitar. Sad music, hopeful horizon, exactly my wavelength. In the guest house journal I wrote, "The heart, like a suitcase, can be overpacked. Leave space for souvenirs." On my last evening, I climbed to the ruins of Carmel Convent. Its roofless nave opened to stars. The structure had been destroyed by earthquake, never fully rebuilt, but somehow more beautiful for its incompleteness. I sat among the broken stones and understood that some things are meant to remain ruins, memorials to what was lost. Yoga was a dare from Mira. The first class left me shaking. During Savasana, the instructor told us to place a hand over the heart, another on the belly, feel breath like waves. I did, and for a brief minute I felt whole. After class, Claire texted, "Coffee?" Your warrior pose looked heroic. I laughed out loud. Atlas adapted to our new life with resilience. He learned the rhythm of my days: morning runs, coffee shop afternoons, balcony evenings. He befriended the neighbor's cat, an unlikely tabby named Marmalade. They would sit together in companionable silence, a living yin-yang symbol. Claire and I rode bicycles through the park at midnight. We stopped on a footbridge. She pointed to the reflection of the constellations in the pond and whispered, "Look, the sky is rehearsing its lines down there." I kissed her, not out of urgency, but alignment. The kiss tasted like possibility. When we pulled apart, she smiled, something authentic and unguarded. "I've been thinking," she said, "about what it means to love someone without trying to fix them. Maybe that's the secret." 3 months later, a friend and I reached a mountain ridge just as the sky peeled from indigo to peach. The wind tasted of pine and possibilities. For the first time, the silence beside me was not emptiness. It was spacious. I took off my wedding ring, pressed it into the soft earth beneath a sapling fir. "Grow something honest," I whispered, unsure if I meant the tree or myself. When the sun crested, it burnished the horizon, not with forgiveness but with unblinking clarity. That was enough. I felt free. Sunlight reaches my windowsill at 6:03 a.m. Atlas snores on the rug. I grind coffee. Claire hums in the shower, off-key but fearless, and I smile at the echo of a life reclaimed. 2 years have passed. I pour 2 cups, watch steam rise like unspoken prayers. Claire joins me. "What are you thinking about?" she asks. "Timing," I say. "How some things have to end before better things can begin. How the person I am now could never have loved you the way you deserve if I hadn't learned to love myself first." She leans against my shoulder. I feel the weight of her, not burden, but anchor. To everyone who has stood at the intersection of heartbreak and dawn, this story walks beside you. To Chloe, wherever you are, your absence became the dark room where I developed into someone sharper. May your light find its rightful sky. To Claire, who loves the scar tissue as tenderly as she loves the unmarked skin. To Atlas, who proved that rescue is reciprocal. And to every sunrise that arrived, whether or not I believed it would. If your own heart is cracked, remember, broken does not mean defective, it means open. Pour something kind into the opening. The heart, stubborn thing, was designed to beat forward. Keep walking, keep writing your next chapter. The pen is in your hands.